Lisa here. This episode is talking about financial wellness, and that is so important in owning her health, owning your wealth. Um, is a way to have access to adequate health care. Um, and so we have Cherese Spand here on who owns She Wealth, a company that is really walking the talk of her story, getting out of, divorce, financial collapse, having, with so many women, and it doesn't matter. Her, like me, were secure, doing all the right things, but, sometimes you end up with a partner that is not doing the right things. And unfortunately, because you're married, you kind of get, in the depths of debts and things like that you may or may not have known about. And, then other things happen in your relationships. Maybe there's other types of infidelities. Maybe there's, but some sort of abuse of some kind. Maybe there's just the fact that you two no longer get along. You outgrew each other. But what is really important and what we talk about today is that how your self-esteem, how it can knock it. And I can attest to that. If you, those of you who have been listening to my story, it don't matter. I mean, we were still set up in a place where it does not take. I just recently had a post, which I will put the link on the show notes here. It doesn't matter that your all your wins. At least in America, and it's much better here than other places. You get knocked down if you're not constantly financially winning. Women do not get a second chance. If you get backed for a company, a movie, like Eva Longoria just recently was saying, you could be an award-winning actress, you could be on the best shows, you could have all these other businesses going. And I can say it, I had my businesses going. I was well into the status of, being a certain person or whatnot. But like, as soon as you get knocked down financially, the cockroaches run away, just like the lights turned on, and you get to really see who your friends are and who will support you. And the men usually get a lot more support, a lot more forgiveness. Even when things were their fault. And I'm not saying, it doesn't take two to tango. Every issue has two to tango. But the reality is that women have to start taking care of themselves, no matter how secure and how safe they feel their relationships are. We have to be setting up and understanding our own personal assets, our digital assets, things that I've talked about since Mind Body Brand Academy, but also ourselves. Our bodies are our assets. That's why health and wealth are intimately tied. And as you listen to Cherese, once that health starts going, it can really impact how you're able to take care of yourself. So listen in on this important conversation. And if you want to email me, support at drlisahollandpt.com with any questions or feedback, or definitely look on my social media at Dr. Lisa Holland PT. Usually put out a prompt and give me your feedback. And I'd love to hear your experience with this conversation.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Welcome, everyone, to Owning Her Health, another wonderful episode with your hostess with the mostest, Dr. Lisa here. So I today have financial wellness. So part of our holistic wealth, meaning WELLTH, wealth, is that connection between our sex, money, power. When I was working in as a yoga therapist and sort of connecting the dots on that with both personal achievements, like in the athletic world, but also very much so in dealing with chronic pains, relational issues, dealing a lot with women's health, which is multi-level, multi-dimensional. It would always come down to some place, dealing with when I say sex, I don't necessarily just mean maybe a sexual dysfunction or something. They'd be there maybe working with me through pelvic floor things, but literally that idea of intimacy and relationship and connection, accepting, being receptive as a woman, as well as being able to express themselves. And I would see, as well as in my own story, a lot of connection with that, with their control of money. A lot of them were powerful women who were, um, either sacrificing their career to a big extent of what they wanted because they decided, I want to be a present mother. I want a different experience than maybe they had with a working mom or a divorced mom or something like that. Or they were doing, the lot what I was doing. I big Generation X, so having it all and how can I figure it out? That's a lot where Belly Guru came from because I was like, how can I have a career I crave and not compromise that, but be in the life I love. And no matter what happens, especially down the path of womanhood, financial wealth, financial wellness, meaning not only making the money, but how you're managing it, the control and the power you have with it in a society such as ours that is set up in a patriarchal type of model. The patriarchy is not the problem. The problem is the patriarchy doesn't respect women as working in here in terms of power flexes and things like that. And so we have this pay gap, we have this leadership gap, we have a problem even getting up on the first rung after we're having babies and things like that. And right now that's society. You don't have society without having babies. So we kind of weigh this. So when I saw Cherese Spand and her company's working with not just women, she does work with men too, but working around that same, this is called owning her health and working all around, her wealth too. She Wealth is the name of that, and her programming and her own story walking out of that. I already saw she's one of our rising medicine women. She's a social healer through her struggles, flipped her pain, turning that into, some sort of personal healing and well-being. And I love that she's bringing in, which I want to bring more and more, is that idea of our assets not, being in the physical world too, because a lot of women struggle with that. We see it in our children, we see it maybe in our house, we see it in our, in our degrees and our titles and this and that. And then we can't seem to sort of manage it. So thank you, Cherese, so much for being here. I want to turn it over to you to kind of really say sort of who you are and how you got there through your story, because I think it's important. But overall, is anything I saying sort of resonating with your story or how you got there or?
100%.
So tell us a little bit. I think you had told me your story's kind of like around that same like 5 years ago or whatever, maybe even looking back 10, you saw the flags, but now you really realize it really being brought into this evolution so that you can elevate now. So tell us your story.
So the last 5 years have been a huge transformation for me, um, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Excuse me. I realized that my book knowledge that I've learned over the past 20 years was not as important as my personal experience was.
And that was in what? Financial services and things like that?
Financial, yes, financial services, and also I also have a degree, cosmetology license, state board licensed, which in the process I helped people feel better about themselves. And towards the end of that career, I went into taking care of women who had medical hair loss issues.
Love that. I didn't know that.
Yes, yes. And I forgot to mention that to you. And being able to help them and see their transformation and respecting their privacy, all those components fit in today with me dealing with women and their financial scenarios and men as well.
Right.
Um,
The courageous
taking,
ones that will come forward.
yes, taking a
Yes.
picture that may not be ideal and transforming it into something that is like, wow,
I love that.
this belongs to me. Yeah.
Love that. So yeah, so you went through a person. I know we talked because I think we connected in a local Charlotte divorce group. And then like somehow we whatever, but I ended up hearing your story about going through a very similar thing where there was like a relational uh infidelity to some extent, and some sort of, dealing with the idea of bankruptcy or saving yourself, and sort of just being to the point where you were like, I need to energetically cut my losses. I know I got to get out of this. So, can you share a little bit of that? Because I think that's a story so many women are so scared of, that they
Right.
will sit in, like I just did a post about, they'll sit in that gap, and they're very powerful women. And we get
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed when we're very
Mm-hmm.
powerful everywhere else. And it's this one place with relational intelligence that we got ourselves kind of in a muck because we really didn't spend a lot of time on it because we're all
Right.
independent and we're like, oh, no, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
we go in and shoveling the ditch deeper.
Right.
So what can you share on that for some wisdom?
So in regards to that, I was in a 18-year relationship, 15-year marriage, and which ultimately ended, right? So like you have this persona and this look that you
Mm-hmm.
are, this image that you are portraying to the world
Right.
and to
And
yourself.
cultivating, like you're
Right.
generating it, like
Right.
you're making your world the way you want it.
The way that I want it. And, I was raised and taught, you'll learn to love your spouse over time and you always try to make things work. But it gets to a point where you're just like, at what expense do I keep pushing this?
Right.
At the expense of my mental sanity? I don't, no, you
Yeah,
know,
like you can't lose yourself. I mean, but we saw I don't know. It was just a different time.
it was a different time. Like we watched our parents, like toil over this stuff for years, but it's a different time now. And we just came to the decision that, we're not doing this anymore.
Mhm.
This is not going to be in my best interest moving forward.
Right.
And when it comes to relationships, I always say that you have three options. Either you're going to accept your spouse for who they are and deal with it and not complain. The second is the two of you are going to come to a compromise and make it work and be able to grow together,
Hmm.
right? Or the third is you're just going to cut your losses and move on. And especially when you're in the face of dealing with infidelity, you have this feeling of, why am I not good enough? Am I
Mm,
pretty enough? Or my skin's not the right color, or my
right.
hair texture is not as good
Right.
as that other person. What does she have that I don't,
Right.
that this relationship. And I had to just come to the realization that it has nothing to do with me,
Yeah.
technically, but it has
Right.
everything to do with me.
Right. I know, and that's the duality. That's why I say, to a certain extent, we can't sit here just personally developing. You have to do spiritual development because it becomes about you being able to witness yourself sort of from the outside. And
Right.
and that growth really is, I mean, you really do need that sense of like something has your back, you
And
know?
it's crazy because going through a divorce, like I've never been through a divorce until now. I mean, my
Hmm.
daughter's from a previous relationship, but we
Hmm.
weren't married, so I went through the custody
Right.
thing and all of that.
Right.
But going through the divorce, you people treat you differently,
Oh yeah.
and I have coined it as the virtual widow.
Oh, I
Widow,
love that.
and I'm not minimizing a woman whose husband has passed away, but when you're getting divorced, you, especially if you have children together, you still have to deal with that relationship for the rest of your life, whether
Right.
you say you've xed it out or not.
Right. Which is hard because, right? Because then you're like almost sometimes for the health of you and them, and the kids, you have almost shifted over to uh, a situationship. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Or you realize you had a situationship and now you got to really develop a relationship.
Because you
So,
got to communicate for
right, you've
real.
got to really communicate, and everybody, and then if you're in a situation where that person's not as emotionally invested in their emotional intelligence and personal development, there's only so much you can do.
That's
So,
right.
this relates so much, and I think people don't connect the dots. Finances, and research shows the women, it says like, oh, men are getting hit with like alimony and this and this and that, and but actually the women turn out and don't fare as well. And I was so frustrated at that. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't matter my degrees or the fact that I had done better in college than him, or whatever. Like, it didn't even matter, because there's the boys group, and the
Yep.
boys group all came in, and the people that can function in a way to shut down and pretend other things don't happen, and they can be in the, like, it didn't. And then on the other hand, where you're dealing with women that, I was the strong one, right? So people
Right.
don't know how to be supportive when the strong one needs support. And so it
Mm-hmm.
felt so, it didn't matter. Like, I was in a situation where, even, I mean, I had to end up getting the divorce versus the separation because I was legally bound, because it didn't matter how much I was saying, hey, I don't know what he's doing or this or that, because I was this, you could still see the veil, no matter how far we've come with equality and equity and whatever, that it was such a disadvantage going through that as a woman versus a man.
It's
Very
very
hard.
hard for us to I'm going to start with the equality piece. You cannot ask technically, right, ask for equality in a system that was built
Right.
by the person that you're asking. Like, it just doesn't
Exactly.
make
It doesn't
sense,
make
right?
sense. And then add
It
in the layers, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't fit. And I learned a lot in the divorce process. I mean, I've been divorced since 2020, but we're still
Yeah.
going through financial legalities.
Mm,
And if if I knew now then what I know now then, I would have done things a lot differently,
100%. Yep.
because there's no protection for you as a woman, really, especially if you're not the sole breadwinner in a relationship.
Hmm.
It leaves you very vulnerable,
Right.
and there's just no protection.
Right. And there's
And
there's just things like, you're connected to your kids in a
it,
different way. I mean, not, we're not saying, but it's just different. I mean, like, you
it's
literally are
just
like, I put my life on the line to bring these kids
right.
through. I
You
mean,
know,
it's just different. So those are the
I,
things that are
you,
not covered in the legalities.
they're not covered in the legalities. Like, somebody made a post the other day, and they said, the sacrifice that you made to raise your children, right? Would you say that you're proud of them, or you're happy with the sacrifices? And I said, I have mixed feelings about that,
Right.
because and it's not just about the children, it's about the relationship and stuff. I put a lot of things on hold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then at the end, what do you get in return for that time that you invested into the relationship, the family, the home, and the financial
Right.
aspect, or paying the bills or what have you? And then in the end, to end up with what?
Right. And I can
Now I
see
have to
that
start
in
over.
the younger kids now. I know we both have children kind of in those, 20s now, kind of navigating things. And I
Right.
can see where the outside of that image it shows, but it's even a layer more. It's our own personal leadership. Like, I more felt like the betrayal of, like, but nobody told me what I was getting into, because no one
Right.
really knew. Like, it wasn't just
Mm-hmm.
that it just is like that. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
nobody gave me the ability to really think about, while we're being sold, like, and for the most part, I was in a profession that, yeah, I had a comparable salary, I can get whatever. But
Right.
again, I also had an image of home and family and this and that, which brings me to the importance of, like, she wealth.
Right.
Why, even as men and women, like, just even the idea of wealth accumulation, wealth management. It's different. I even felt like in my career it was go out and make a service for the world from day one. Whereas I can see where my ex and just that whole kind of culture of corporate and like their daddies were bankers and their daddies were, whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
like go out and go grab that world, go get it, go, shows like Suits and all these other like ballers and like that is not necessarily, I'm not going to say every woman, but it's almost like you go and you either join that yourself, but I don't think that was really what we were. Maybe now some people have shown that to the next generation, but it's a real different I just wish people had spoken to me because at the other extreme, I feel like men don't get a lot of the management and the
No.
long-term longevity conversations we get and the legacy conversations and the input now without constant instant gratification that they don't get that we get. And that's the whole beauty of what marriage could be or union in relationship. But like, we're saying so many people were in situationships,
Right.
and things
Right.
like that. So tell me a little bit where She Wealth came from all of that.
So in that respect, I was left to sit with my stuff, right?
Hmm.
And I already had this group on Facebook where women were coming to share no judgment about, what you're going through and just conversation and a fun place where they can just relate and release. And I
Yeah.
said, I need to turn this into my brand because
Hmm.
this is me, and I am a representative of other women. And if I'm going through it, then other people are going through it and they're feeling it, and nobody's really talking about it. And no one's really helping these women be proactive and these men be proactive to teach them what they need to know so that they don't get to this point. Because a lot of people are in love with the idea of a wedding and not what a marriage really takes, right?
Yeah, like I don't
So,
feel like I was really taught because we didn't really see a lot of great examples, to be perfectly
yeah,
honest.
exactly. So, I'm left to sit with my stuff, and I had to completely restructure my life. I had to restructure my mindset, and it left me in a bit of a funk, kind of in some darkness for a while because I ended up having an emotional
Yeah,
meltdown,
it's going to
breakdown,
happen. It's all tied in.
and my livelihood is speaking to people, so I could not even see people without crying. Like the tears would, and they would look at me like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not
Be perfectly honest. No, you asked and I'm telling,
okay."
yeah. And that
you
took
know,
strength too, Cherese. So I really want to credit you and honor you on that because
Thank you.
my whole practice, my private practice with women's health was what was the end result of the only time they would actually ask for help was when it finally came through the body and they had enough of an excuse. But at that
Right.
point, by the time it shows up in your body, it's been in your mind and in your soul and in
For a
yourselves for a
while.
long time, for a
and
long
that's
time.
and that's a part of the she wealth. Like people see it and they think it's just about money, but it's savvy, sexy, healthy, and empowered. And
Hmm.
in this story, I was sick for a long period of time. And even now, I deal with invisible illness that people can't see. So, looking at me, I'm perfectly normal and all that type of stuff, but they don't realize that I deal with 3 autoimmune disorders. So, in that, how do you continue to thrive, right? Dealing with your own personal stuff that you can't control, right? And then dealing with illness on top of it. And with the illness, and that's a story for another day, but
Yeah.
I'm going to touch on it a little bit. I spent everything that I had while I was not working in the process
Yep.
to becoming well. And once your body, like you said, is sick, there's nothing that you can do but give it time
Yep.
to heal itself.
Yep.
And that healing process is grueling. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and sit here and
Yep.
act
And you
like,
can't
you
and you
know,
can't throw
it,
enough money at it. That would
no,
be what was so frustrating to a lot of my clients, because here they were, right? They became the vice president of this, the leader of this, the start of this, the doctor this and that, and they were so frustrated. And that's another betrayal, right? Because you're somehow told, well, you'll just throw money at it at the point if you really need something. But,
right. It
ladies, let me tell you, it doesn't work that way.
it doesn't work. I don't care how much money you have.
Yep.
If your health is not good,
Yep. And you
it
can't
doesn't
say it
mean
needs to be
anything.
done by Friday just because you can delegate that at work in the world. You can't say it.
When they told me that my healing, my physical healing internally was going to take a minimum of 13 months,
Ugh,
I was like, what?
I
Like,
don't
I
got
have to,
time. I don't
like,
got time. Well, you're going to make it.
I had no other choice but to lay there on the couch,
Right.
and in that process, excuse me, it helped me in that process to heal my mind,
Yep.
because when I got on the other side of, I'm gonna say, the dis-ease in my body through the divorce and having the emotional breakdown, there was nothing that can help me except for time.
Mm-hmm.
So doctors can medicate you and give you whatever, but you have to give yourself time. And so the thing that I focused on, which was the only thing that I could control at the moment, you know, was, like I told you, making my bed every day. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
was a goal for me
Mm-hmm.
to accomplish. Like, if I got up and I did that, then I was good. I was golden. Forget about eating and all the other stuff.
Right.
Like,
That'll
I
come. But
that'll come.
that's so important though. And thank you so much for sharing that, because again, I think people would look at you now and you put together and all this. And this is the story going on behind closed doors for so many women. And the ability to come out and be speaking to that from a place of power on the other side is not about now life's perfect,
No.
but is about, I'm really hearing and it's resonating with you're living in your excellence now,
Right.
and that you saw it, and it's and broke it, reverse engineer to the make, and from that seed, like many of the people here, this whole podcast is about flipping the pain, turning it into some sort of like
Hmm.
passion, which is ignition for something, which is that
Right.
commitment and that determination, putting all that anger, putting all that, at least for that moment into that. And then if you can make a profit out of it, good for you. Congratulate
Excellent.
yourself.
Right. Hmm.
Congratulate yourself. So when did the sort of the structure of the business sort really start coming together for you? What year was that?
Um. So I want to say, well, the structure came immediately
Okay.
because I had all this time alone that I was not interacting with people. So what am I doing? Sitting on the couch all day.
Mm-hmm.
So I just dug deep. I started to create content. What do I want my website to look like? And what type of quotes and memes am I going to collect for the page? And what are my workshops going to entail? What are the topics? And so I created all of that with the intent of, when time is right, I just get to press play, you know, instead of pressing the panic button. I get to press,
Yeah, which
the
is
press
which is
release button.
often how a lot of us medicine women work, because it's an alchemy.
Right.
It's an
Mm-hmm.
alchemizing. You're taking these pieces, and it's not necessarily a recipe for anything
Mm-hmm.
specific in the end, because it's still it's going to make this brand new thing, and you know it.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
And I want to bring up a point about making the bed. Two things. The first thing was, making it gave me the power to not get back in it after it was made. So
Mm.
I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to lay there all day in my misery,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the second thing was that, wow, this just changed, like, in the revelation of it. So I figured that I need to get pretty pillows and make sure that the bedding was nice and the right thread counts on the sheets and all that, because that's like my safe space.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it always had to look pretty. So no matter what was going on around me, maybe I didn't hang up my clothes, or maybe the laundry was on the floor, or maybe whatever. But that space, I made sure that it was a secure, safe, beautiful space that I could retreat to and look forward to later on that day, no matter what was happening in my life. And with the transition into she wealth, um, I should say the birthing of she wealth,
Mhm. Mhm.
it was me moving from a patriarchal structure and embracing my softness and embracing my femininity. And it's not a man hating campaign or anything of that nature.
Right.
It is for us to recognize our power and who we are underneath all of this stuff.
Yeah. And I can see where you sort of brought in that idea, right? Because this is talking to scientific things like Robert Dilts's work in terms of needing this like um emotional, like psychological levels of security before we can even, sort of contribute, in a way that, I mean, I think a lot of people contribute while fearful or whatnot. It's not a matter of doing it fearlessly. I don't believe in that. I don't believe really. I think fearless means you're stoic and shut down.
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
think the strength of our power as women is that innate ability to show people. But isn't it even stronger if you could actually process and feel and still not be an asshole? you know, like,
True story.
is
Like,
it,
yes.
isn't that even better? And what I heard from you is like the way, just and to anyone listening to this, watch what you are able to do and where, because I heard, the beauty and creating that aesthetic, and that's super important to me too. My top motivators are knowledge and discovery and then aesthetics. And that's like, and then you have that in your business too, because you're like saying savvy, sexy, you have like the fashion aspect, the look of your brand. These are all clues to like who you are and bringing them over into the things that are making you feel powerful, especially the way you're making money, because money, it doesn't make the world go round. That's some sort of cosmic gravitational pull or something that we're trying to understand, but it does make things easier to
Mm-hmm.
to get into conversations for, to, you're right. You can pay off people to put you in positions where you can speak what you know is being blocked and things like that. So,
Yep.
each of these archetypes, I kind of love that too, because, definitely in the Vedic wisdom and even in, Catholicism that I grew up in, there was these ideas of different saints and different, and I think people kind of we personify things because that's how we understand things. It's hard for us to understand because we're not as spiritual as like the native cultures and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. We have to kind of put it in a form. But I love the idea of like, these are different personalities, the different aspects, the multi dimensions of this sort of whole total woman. Um, and I see that in you because I'm sure you see a lot of mistakes. I know pre this conversation we were talking about, you know, a couple of major mistakes people make with their money, the ego
Mm-hmm.
traps and wanting things for free when that's
Mm-hmm.
a huge poverty mindset,
Huge.
right? That you're
Yes.
attracting. You think, oh, I'm getting a deal, but you're not because you're not making an investment. And I'm not saying
Right.
you have free doesn't help, but you're in a
Mm-hmm.
very different mindset of needing to be at a certain place of personal determination and personal authority for it to help. Is
Right.
that right? So,
Exactly.
what are some, could you give an example of like an ego trap that you see commonly when people are kind of coming to you for, I need help. I realize, like what are people, how do people know they need you?
Well, the crazy thing about that question and the statement that you made was being in this industry for so long and being taught that you have to teach these free workshops all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pouring myself out, excuse me, and people were showing up, but they were broken. because of other
Right.
things going on in their lives. So how can I talk to them about their money and they can't even
Right.
figure
Because it
out?
feels so vulnerable with that. Right.
Right, right. Like they can't even figure out like how to get along with their adult child, or they're taking care of
Right.
ill parents and that sort of thing. So even myself, I had to transition out of always wanting or feeling that I have to offer my knowledge for free
Hmm.
and say, you want me to come and speak? This is my fee for
Right.
speaking
Because there's
engagement.
value for that. This is a transmission of such power.
Yes. And the energy and the life force that it takes to stand before people, interact with people, the knowledge that you've accumulated over the years and now wanting to pour
Right.
out or back into the community. There has to be some type of exchange
Right.
or
Especially
compensation.
with your
Yeah.
story of the dealing with the autoimmunity and this, which makes you very empathetic, which makes you understand how to work with even certain people that are maybe dealing with that because they will need to, right? They will need to
Yeah.
invest here a little differently than somebody else not dealing with that. So that's of such value. But if you never show up
You
with crediting it, you're going to attract the wrong people that don't credit it either, and then you're both sitting there poor.
that's it. And I,
You know?
so I have, and this is very recent for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've had to make the mindset shift to say, okay, like it's a make your bed moment, right? Like you got to make your bed and stand on this regarding, how you're going to operate your
Right. Walk
business.
the talk, walk the talk.
So it's just a must. And then once that shift happened, it was like this, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a conversation that I had, or two conversations that I had. And that night I went right to work. I'm like, okay, I got to put out this content. I got to put this out. I got to do this. I got to schedule this. And it just happened. This is my ask. They're like, okay, done.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah,
like, wow, that was
right,
easy.
right. Like it's much easier. Like that's it. Like those are energy leaks. I speak to the idea of like finding your energy leaks and I set people up sort of, we develop a framework in level one and then we sort of like work through that. But people don't realize like just because you've been so balling it and bossing it and whatever doesn't mean you haven't been like you think it's so hard and you get stuck in that like hard, but it actually could be easier. I'm not saying it's totally easy and you don't work. That's not what we're saying at all. But
No,
it's like
no.
when you can start to use your energy properly and you start to
Right.
put the force where it needs to, and also saying, this is my limit. You suddenly realize how hard you were working. It's like I always think of it as like when I first had my daughter, my first child, and I didn't even understand how tired I was until that one night that she
Hmm.
slept the whole night. And I was like, you like, I didn't even understand. Like, you don't know till you know.
Right.
So what could you tell it? Okay, so let's say she wealth is we're going to talk a couple minutes that we're closing it up. I know we could talk forever. We might even have to make this two shows, so it's so great. But
Okay.
uh if she wealth is successful, so down the road, so you're getting people together on there, you actually are holding a very straight, I normally have people who are sort of maybe leaning towards this like um kind of maverick different way of looking at it, but actually you're going to bring people into a container, which I think a lot of women need, because in our finances it's been again out of our control, or like we cipher it to the kids instead of us, and so you actually are pretty traditionally linear minded in what it sounds like in sort of setting up those systems.
Hmm.
But and so if that's really successful, if you start getting in front of people to get them to get the control back in there, the people that you're working with to get the control back at that level, what do you think the Cherese of 10 years from now is going to be able to tell you has been accomplished? What's the vision?
So it's like, congratulations, you've created through a model a community of empowered women who have the proof of their progress. So
Mm,
they'll be able to speak to their experience and where they started and where they are now.
right.
Um,
And have the
and
tools, right?
and
Like,
have to have the tools, have the support, and because they've showed up, right? They're ready. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I never understood that statement because the teacher was always there. It's just that you have to be ready and open to receive the information at that time. And I
right,
always say, when opportunity knocks, you have to be at the door dressed, but on the other side of the door is a 4-letter word called work, whether it's mental work, spiritual work, physical work. And I want to add into this that while I was in my little cycle of going through it, I just immersed myself in service. So I volunteered everywhere,
contribution. Yep.
yes, that I could. It got me out of the house. I was able to meet people. I didn't have to talk about myself, right? Because I was there to provide a service for this nonprofit or organization or whoever I was. So I was there to laugh and enjoy. And even if I got in my car and cried or went
Right.
home and cried, I was still able to be of service. So on the other end of that, these women will say, I have given my contribution to society
Yeah. I
and
hear
I'm
big,
looking forward.
I hear big time legacy.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. So, tell us in the last couple minutes sort of so this sounds great. So I'm sitting here and I'm realizing, you know what? I have some leadership gaps in the way I manage my finances or even in my income because I think a lot of times that's what happens. It's either one or the other where you're like great with doing so much like you can make $5 last the whole month but you can't seem to get more than the $5. Or you're with this other end that you're like, I have $5,000 every month, and for some reason I'm
Right.
running out between like the by the 14th. So like it really is this ebb and flow of being able to like receive and manage and then also use in a way that's creating impact and contribution and all of these things so that we are putting ourselves in a position if I'm realizing what I think I have some gaps here in my leadership, my financial management and my power with money. Maybe I'm going through divorce, maybe I want to make a career shift. I'm realizing this isn't for me. This is feels like a really unhealthy place to be right now. What's the best way to get in touch with you? I know you have a couple of ways that people can work with you.
Right. So can I need to say
Yeah.
something before
Yes,
I tell them
of
how to
course.
contact me. The most pivotal point of what I'm doing now is that I went through a complete financial devastation.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up the $5. $5 is what I kept in my wallet at all times,
Mm.
no matter how bad it got.
Me too.
You
I've got a
know,
$10 bill in my thing and I don't spend
uh,
it. I just put it there for
yes.
like a symbol.
So, like at the food pantry, wherever, like $5 is what I kept in my wallet. And then I was taught that you should always have $100 bill now,
Mm.
okay, in your wallet that you're not spending. It just stays there because you attract, right, what you have.
Okay, I got to go get that
So
$100
it
bill.
it's all about the Benjamins, baby,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
so
got a gold symbol one right here. That just because of that.
exactly. Yes, I love it. So like you said, people look at you and they're like, oh, it's easy for her to say, she's never. Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Right. And it's the power of compounding. Like what you're talking about is, that's what I just love that we're finally to a place where I can just let my metaphysical flag shine because
Right.
it makes sense now. We're at a level of consciousness where it's like, no, 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 I've been able to turn my $5 into 50, then make that 100. And now I could put this 100, which in my mind is like just as sacred as that $5 because you're just giving it this we're starting to see it at the quantum level, at the energetics and all of that. So thank you for kind of saying that
Yes.
because even though we put you in a very kind of linear container once they're maybe working with you because that's how the world is working. It does come from this concept of like, why are you making, that's all the mindset shifts. And so why are you making this sacrifice? Or where can we see the joy in
Right.
that, right? Because it feels a
Mm-hmm.
lot different to being like, oh, I have to have $5 because like I may never have it again, to being like, no, I put $5 there, I put $100 there because I know more is coming.
More is
That's a
coming.
huge
Yeah.
gap. That's a huge leap.
Yeah.
So if they do want to do that leap with you, how are they getting in touch with you best?
So, website is www.shewealthinternational.com.
Okay.
Shewealthinternational.com.
Okay.
WEALTH.
Right. That'll all be on the show notes, so don't worry.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
We're on Facebook, Savvy, Healthy, and Empowered, and we're also on Instagram as She
Okay.
Wealth.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I love those kind of like, because they're different people. People are going to be savvy with their money. People are going to be sexy with their money. People are going to be successful and empowered. Like, what does that look like? I love all of that sort of look to that, and sort of in how it is. And I know that there's I know some of the decisions you made, like to make sort of, if you're not quite ready to take action with you, because you do need to be ready to take action with Cherese. It's going to work with you at that level. But I know there's like a membership or an option to like, you
Yes. So depending on what they need and where they are in their lives, we can help them transition into a monthly membership type deal, or they could have a one-time counseling session.
okay.
Our initial, I call it strategy session, is or discovery session is complimentary. So we'll sit down, talk, see what you need. Sometimes that might be enough just to steer them in the right direction
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with different products and or services. But if they need a little bit more hand holding type of scenario, then we can create that for them
Yeah.
and help them accomplish their goals.
Yeah, and I think that's super important. I know that that had kept me. It wasn't that I didn't know, and this is what's super important for anybody listening to. I get that. We get that. Like you're so smart. You know a lot, but it's like it's intimidating. Like all the financial planners seem like they were men. And even the women that like they didn't seem like they were either young, didn't have kids, or like weren't in the same scenario. They weren't entrepreneurs. They were definitely working for the system, so like somebody that can really understand all these different pieces, because entrepreneur life is different,
Right.
and working when you're dealing with a health crisis in addition is different, and when you have kids versus when you don't have, or when you're planning for doing something in your future versus not, like it, if you can find somebody like Cherese, these other medicine women, we're really pulling together things that people even 10 years ago were not pulling together. And it's such a
Right.
blessing now. And so like I'm so happy you're doing this work and stepping out and kind of speaking to that. But we do understand it's hard. It's hard to kind of understand you have this gap. Is there any like final words or like advice? Like, let's just say if you had somebody like this 10 years ago, what would you have told
Mm.
her to close out the show?
To breathe,
Mm-hmm.
reach out. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
afraid to share what you're going through. Um, and know that the light gets brighter on the other side of the tunnel.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on another episode. I know this was a little longer, but it was a goodie. It was a goodie, and you were here. And definitely go on to the show notes over on Owning Her Health, over on the Lipston show notes. You will see on my social media a link to get there on my LinkedIn. In my bio is the easiest way at Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. And we will see you next time on Owning Her Health. Thanks so much, Reese.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.